Hello everyone, before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It is quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let us return to our main character. The rain was falling in steady sheets against the glass walls of Hale Industries, the kind of relentless storm that made the city outside blur into streaks of silver and gray. Inside the top-floor conference room, Nathan Hale stood by the window, his reflection cold and controlled, the face of a man who had built an empire from nothing and learned to trust no one. Behind him, the faint hum of the city merged with the sound of his assistant's voice. "Sir, she is here." Nathan turned. The doors opened, and Mia Torres stepped in, her clothes still damp from the downpour, her resume clutched tightly in her hand. She was here to plead for a second chance after being wrongfully fired from one of his subsidiaries, accused of a mistake she did not make. Nathan studied her for a long moment before speaking, his tone precise, deliberate. "You need money," he said. "I need a wife." The words hung in the air like static. Mia blinked, unsure if she had heard correctly. "Excuse me?" Nathan crossed the room, placing a sleek folder on the glass table between them. "A contract marriage," he said. "Purely legal. No emotion, no intrusion. I need a spouse to secure a merger deal before the end of the quarter. You need financial stability. We can solve both problems." She let out a shaky laugh. "You are serious?" "Deadly," Nathan replied. "I will pay your mother's hospital bills, cover your debts, and give you a new start. All I ask is that for the next 6 months, you play the role of Mrs. Hale." Mia's mind spun. It sounded absurd, immoral, even, but the desperation in her chest was heavier than her pride. Her mother's treatments were running out, and no one else was offering a lifeline. She looked down at the folder. Inside were legal papers, typed in neat black ink, waiting for her signature. "Why me?" she asked quietly. Nathan's eyes softened, almost imperceptibly. "Because you are honest," he said, "and because you have nothing to lose." The clock ticked in the silence that followed. Lightning flashed outside, washing the room in brief white light. Mia could feel her pulse in her ears, the weight of her choice pressing down on her. "What are the rules?" she finally asked. Nathan's voice stayed calm. 3. Do not fall in love. Do not question my business. And do not walk away before the contract ends. She swallowed hard, her fingers trembling as she reached for the pen. When the ink touched paper, a quiet finality settled between them. Nathan closed the folder, his expression unreadable. "Welcome to the arrangement, Mrs. Hale." As he turned away, Mia exhaled, unsure if she had just saved her life or sold it. Outside, thunder rolled over the skyline, and in that sound, their 6-month lie began. The next morning, the city woke under a pale sky streaked with light rain. Mia stood in front of the mirror inside her small apartment, staring at her reflection as if she barely recognized the woman looking back. The ink on the contract was dry, and her new reality had begun. The phone buzzed. A message from Nathan's assistant appeared on the screen, "Car downstairs. You are expected at Hale Residence." Her stomach tightened. She packed a small suitcase, the same one she had used when she moved to the city for her first design job. Now, it felt heavier, filled not with clothes but with uncertainty. When she stepped outside, a sleek black car waited at the curb. The driver greeted her politely and opened the door. The city blurred past as the car wound through the upper districts where every building seemed to touch the clouds. 40 minutes later, the gates of Hale Residence swung open. It was not just a house, it was a world. White stone columns, manicured gardens, a fountain shaped like an abstract flame. Mia stepped out, gripping the strap of her bag. Nathan was waiting by the steps, perfectly dressed in a charcoal suit. His voice was calm, professional. You will stay here for the duration of the arrangement. My staff has been instructed to treat you as Mrs. Hale. She nodded, unsure what to say. There is a dinner tonight, he continued. It will be our first public appearance. You will meet members of the board. Keep your answers brief, smile when needed, and avoid personal questions. His words were precise, mechanical, almost rehearsed. Understood, Mia said softly. Good. Amelia, my housekeeper, will help you prepare. He turned away, already on his phone, his focus elsewhere. Inside the mansion, every surface gleamed. The air smelled faintly of jasmine and polish. Mia followed Amelia through hallways lined with abstract art and floor-to-ceiling windows. Her room overlooked the city, but she could not feel its beauty, only the weight of distance between her old life and this one. Hours later, the transformation began. A stylist arrived, fitting her into a midnight blue gown that caught the light like water. Her hair was swept into an elegant twist, makeup subtle but sharp. When she looked into the mirror, she hardly saw the struggling architect who had begged for a chance yesterday. She saw Mrs. Hale, temporary wife of one of the most powerful men in New York. Evening descended like velvet. Downstairs, the ballroom shimmered with chandeliers and polished glass. Cameras flashed as guests arrived. Nathan stood near the entrance, talking to investors. When his eyes met hers, something flickered: surprise, admiration, maybe something else. He offered his arm. You look appropriate, he said, voice even. She smiled faintly. I will take that as a compliment. The flash of a dozen cameras cut through the room as they stepped together into the spotlight. Reporters whispered, trying to piece together the sudden marriage that no one had seen coming. Nathan guided her through the crowd, keeping his hand at her back, steady and composed. When a journalist cornered them and asked, Mr. Hale, how did you and your wife meet, Nathan did not flinch. Through work, he said simply. She saw potential where others did not. His tone was protective without being tender, calculated but convincing. Mia followed his lead, answering softly, letting her nerves melt behind practiced smiles. Later, during dinner, she noticed him glancing her way when he thought she was not looking. Maybe curiosity. Maybe something more. As the evening ended, Nathan escorted her back to the car. You handled yourself well, he said, his voice quieter than before. Thank you, she replied. The ride home was silent except for the hum of the engine. When they reached the mansion, he paused before walking inside. You can rest now. Tomorrow, we begin the routine. The door closed behind him, leaving Mia in the grand foyer alone. For the first time, she realized this was not just a deal, it was a stage. And somewhere between the rules and the lies, she might lose more than her heart. She might lose herself. Days turned into weeks, and the routine Nathan had promised began. Every morning, Mia joined him for breakfast at precisely 7:30. The dining table was long enough for 12, yet they sat at opposite ends, exchanging polite greetings that sounded more like business meetings than conversations. Afterward, Nathan disappeared into conference calls, and Mia attended etiquette lessons and charity briefings arranged by his assistant. Every detail of her new life was scheduled, measured, and polished. She learned to smile without revealing nerves, to walk beside him in front of cameras, to hold his hand for precisely 3 seconds when flashing lights went off. But behind closed doors, silence ruled. They passed each other in hallways like strangers trapped in the same play. One evening, as rain tapped against the windows, Mia lingered in the study after a charity meeting. Architectural sketches covered the table, part of a foundation project Nathan had been funding for affordable housing. She traced the lines with her fingertips, recognizing potential flaws in the design. The foundation spacing here is too narrow, she murmured, mostly to herself. A voice behind her replied, You see that too? She turned, startled. Nathan stood in the doorway, his tie loosened, sleeves rolled up. It was the first time she had seen him without the armor of his suit. Sorry, I should not have touched anything, she said quickly. He shook his head. No, you are right. The team missed it. I used to oversee every blueprint, but these days I am buried in numbers. His tone softened as he stepped closer, studying the plans beside her. You have an eye for structure. It used to be my job, she replied. Before the company labeled me careless. Nathan looked at her then, the first real look that went past her title. That was not your fault, he said quietly. I checked the files after you signed the contract. Someone else altered the plans to cover their own mistake. Mia froze. You knew? He nodded slightly. Yes, but by then the damage was done. I could not interfere without exposing internal politics. This, he gestured at the papers, is my way of fixing things, in part. His honesty disarmed her. For a moment, the walls between them cracked. Why tell me now? She asked. Nathan hesitated. Because you deserve to know. And because I trust you. The room fell silent except for the rain. Something in his voice, steady, sincere, unsettled her more than his coldness ever had. Later that night, Mia stood on the balcony, city lights stretching endlessly below. For the first time, she wondered if beneath the contract and the control, Nathan Hale was just another person trying to protect something fragile. Days later, their fragile truce was tested. At a charity gala, a guest made a cruel remark about Cinderella marriages and how long they usually lasted. Before Nathan could respond, Mia lifted her glass and said calmly, fairy tales are overrated. Real partnerships are built on terms both people understand. The table went quiet. Nathan's expression barely changed, but beneath the table, his hand brushed hers briefly, a silent thank you. After the event, as they drove back through the city, he broke the silence. You handled that better than I would have. I am used to people underestimating me, she said. It is almost a hobby now. He smiled faintly. Then maybe we are both misunderstood. The words hung between them, fragile as glass. When they returned home, he paused at her door. Tomorrow morning, he said, I would like you to join the design review. Your perspective might help. She looked at him, uncertain. I thought this was just for show. Maybe it does not have to be, Nathan said. Then he walked away, leaving her with a thought that would not stop echoing. Maybe the lines between fake and real were already starting to blur. By the end of the third month, the boundaries that once defined their deal had begun to blur. Mia was no longer just the woman Nathan introduced as his wife for appearances. She had become part of the rhythm of his days, quietly altering the space around him. At meetings, she contributed insights that surprised his board. At home, she began leaving her sketches on the kitchen counter, and Nathan would pause to study them with genuine interest. One morning, she found a note beside her coffee cup, written in his sharp handwriting, Your idea for the green roof is brilliant. Let us discuss it tonight. It was simple, but it made her heart stutter. That night, they did talk about architecture, about childhood, about the strange loneliness that came with success. The conversation lasted hours, long after the rain had stopped. For the first time, Nathan laughed freely, the sound warm and unguarded. The house that once felt like a museum finally breathed. But the illusion of peace did not last. One afternoon, as Mia walked into the library, she overheard a voice, sharp and female, speaking to Nathan. You are really going through with this charade? The woman was Victoria Hale, his cousin and a senior shareholder. Marrying an outsider to save your image? What happens when she starts believing it is real? Nathan's voice was measured. This is my decision. Victoria scoffed. You are letting your emotions cloud your judgment. The board will not be kind when they find out this marriage is fake. Mia froze behind the doorway, her pulse quickening. She had known their arrangement was temporary, but hearing it spoken aloud, as ammunition, made her stomach twist. She stepped back silently, not wanting him to know she had heard. That night, she kept her distance during dinner, her mind spinning. Nathan noticed her quietness but said nothing. Days passed, and their interactions grew restrained again. One evening, she was reviewing design reports when Nathan entered her study. "You have been avoiding me," he said, not accusingly but with a quiet confusion. She kept her eyes on the papers. "I am just keeping things professional, as the contract states." He studied her for a long moment. "You heard something." She did not answer. "Victoria came to you?" he pressed. "No," Mia said softly, finally meeting his eyes. "But I heard enough." Nathan sighed, running a hand through his hair. "She is wrong about us." "Is she?" Mia asked, her voice trembling. "Because I cannot tell where the truth begins anymore. We started with rules, Nathan, but you keep breaking them, and I keep letting you." The silence that followed was thick, heavy with everything neither of them dared admit. Nathan took a step closer, but she turned away. "I need some air." She left the room before he could respond. Outside, the city glittered under a pale moon. She walked to the edge of the terrace, arms folded tightly. Inside, Nathan stood alone, watching the door she had just closed. For the first time, control slipped through his fingers. The next morning, a message from the board arrived, demanding a formal meeting to discuss allegations that his marriage was a strategic cover-up. Someone, probably Victoria, had leaked the rumor. Nathan read the email in silence, then looked toward the empty chair where Mia usually sat. He knew what the board wanted for him to end the charade before it damaged the company. But when he thought of Mia's steady courage, her quiet integrity, realized something had already shifted beyond business. That evening, he found her sketching by the window. "There is a storm coming," he said quietly. "The board knows." She put down her pencil, her expression calm. "Then it is time to end the act, Nathan. You do not owe me anything." He stepped closer, his voice steady but low. "You are wrong about that. I owe you more than you think." The rain began again, drumming against the glass, as both of them understood that the lie they built was about to face its reckoning. The following week unfolded like a storm that refused to end. The media had caught the scent of scandal, and headlines began to bloom across financial networks. "Hail marriage hoax? CEO under fire for contract union." Every article twisted their story into something ugly, something strategic. Cameras gathered outside the mansion gates, flashing like lightning whenever the front door opened. Inside, the tension was palpable. Nathan worked late every night, his office door closed, his temper buried under restraint. Mia stayed in her room, her phone buzzing with unanswered messages from old colleagues and reporters. One afternoon, as she stood by the window watching the crowd outside, Nathan appeared in the doorway. His face was pale but composed. "The board meeting is tomorrow," he said. "They will demand a statement." "Then tell them the truth," she replied. "End this before it destroys everything." He shook his head slowly. "If I admit the marriage was contractual, it will confirm every rumor and collapse the merger. Thousands of jobs could be at risk." "And if you lie?" Mia asked. "You will lose yourself." Nathan's eyes darkened. "I already have." The silence between them was sharp enough to cut. That night, neither of them slept. When dawn broke, Nathan left early for the meeting, wearing the same gray suit he had worn the day they first met. Mia sat in the quiet kitchen, the contract folder lying on the table before her. 6 months, it said. But time had changed everything those pages once meant. Hours later, she turned on the television. Nathan stood before the board and a line of cameras, his expression calm but resolute. The chairman's voice echoed, "Mr. Hale, are the allegations true? Was your marriage to Ms. Torres a fabricated arrangement to secure Horizon's merger?" The room fell silent. Nathan looked down at the prepared statement on the table, then pushed it aside. "No," he said finally, his voice steady. "It was not fake. It was flawed, yes, but real in every way that mattered." The chairman frowned. "So you deny it was a business contract?" Nathan met the cameras directly. "It began that way. I will not lie about that. I was a man too used to control, too afraid of trust. I thought a contract could replace connection. But Mia Torres reminded me what integrity looks like even when surrounded by greed. She is not a cover story. She is the best decision I ever made. The reporters erupted with questions, but Nathan did not waver. He continued, if this costs me my position, so be it. I will not build a company on deception any longer. When Mia heard those words, her breath caught. The man who once spoke only in terms of deals had finally chosen honesty over power. That evening, as rain began to fall again, Nathan returned to the mansion. The front hall was quiet, the reporters gone. Mia was waiting by the fireplace, her suitcase beside her. You told them everything, she said softly. He nodded. It was time. You could lose everything, she whispered. Nathan stepped closer, his voice gentle. I lost more the moment I let you believe you were just a part of a plan. For a long moment, neither spoke. The storm outside grew louder, wind rattling against the glass. Then Nathan took her hand. There is no contract anymore, Mia. If you stay, stay because you want to. Not because of what we signed. She looked up at him, eyes glistening. And if I do? He smiled faintly, then maybe we can start over, no terms, no conditions, no lies. The thunder rolled, distant but soft, as she whispered, then I will stay. He pulled her gently into his arms, the firelight catching the faint gold of her hair. The world outside could say what it wanted. Inside, the storm finally broke not with destruction, but with truth. The days that followed were strangely quiet, as if the entire city was holding its breath. The scandal had burned fast and bright, and now the headlines had shifted to new stories. Nathan Hale had resigned from his position at Hale Industries, shocking the financial world. The board tried to convince him to reconsider, but he simply said, integrity does not need a title. He left the building with nothing but a single briefcase, walking past the reporters who once called him untouchable. Mia watched it unfold from home, a strange ache in her chest. He had kept his word. That night, when he returned to the mansion, he looked different, lighter somehow, though exhaustion shadowed his eyes. She met him at the door, unsure what to say. He spoke first. It is done. I am free. Free, she repeated quietly, her voice trembling. And what happens now? Nathan smiled faintly. Now, I start over. Not as a CEO. Not as a headline. Just as a man who owes a woman an apology and maybe a future. His words caught her off guard. She looked away, blinking back emotion. You do not owe me anything, Nathan. Maybe not, he said gently. But I want to give you something anyway. He handed her an envelope. Inside was a single sketch her design for the Horizon project, updated with notes in his handwriting. The board approved this before I left, he said. It will be built under your name. The Torres Foundation will fund it. Mia's breath caught. You did this? Nathan nodded. You built the vision. I only cleared the path. She looked down at the paper, then at him. You walked away from everything for this. For you, he corrected softly. And for the chance to be someone you could believe in. A silence stretched between them, warm this time, filled with things neither of them needed to explain. Over the next weeks, they began building a quieter life together. Nathan took time away from the city, spending mornings helping at local community centers and afternoons assisting Mia with the project blueprints. Gone was the man of meetings and mergers, in his place was someone human, imperfect, and real. One evening, they drove out to the Horizon construction site. The foundation had just been poured, and the steel framework reached toward the sky like a promise. Mia walked ahead, the wind tugging at her hair. Nathan followed, stopping beside her. You once told me you designed cities that never judged you, he said softly. I hope this one will be kinder. She turned to look at him, smiling. It already is. He reached into his coat pocket and pulled out something small, a silver ring, simple and unadorned. No contracts this time, he said. Just a question. Her heart raced as he knelt, his voice steady. Mia Torres, will you marry me? Not for the company. Not for the cameras. Just for the life we have left to build. The wind carried his words into the open air. Mia pressed a hand to her lips, her eyes shining. Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. Nathan slid the ring onto her finger, and for the first time since they met, there were no terms, no lies, no expectations, only truth. As the sun dipped below the skyline, its light spilled across the unfinished steel beams, turning them to gold. It looked, in that fleeting moment, like the beginning of something permanent. He pulled her close, their foreheads touching. You once said fairy tales are overrated, he murmured. She smiled through tears. Maybe they just needed better writers. The city lights flickered to life below, and somewhere deep inside both of them, the weight of the past finally lifted. The arrangement that began with lies had ended with something stronger, something real. A few months later, the Horizon building stood near completion, its glass facade reflecting the morning sun over the skyline. It had become more than a project, it was a symbol of second chances, both for the city and for the two people who had built it together. Every floor carried Mia's design, open, light-filled, and human. Every line whispered of redemption. Nathan had traded his suits for rolled-up sleeves and steel-toed boots, spending his days at the site, side by side with the workers. He seemed happier there, grounded in something real. One afternoon, as he tightened a bolt on a railing, a voice called from behind him. Mr. Hale, you have visitors. It was one of the construction managers, pointing toward the entrance. A group of reporters stood waiting, cameras ready. Nathan wiped the sweat from his brow and walked over calmly. We heard you refused all interviews since your resignation, one journalist said. But people want to know what is next for Nathan Hale? He glanced toward Mia, who was reviewing plans nearby, sunlight catching the ring on her finger. This, he said simply. Building something honest. No contracts, no titles. Just purpose. The crowd went quiet, recording every word. And your relationship with Ms. Torres, another asked. Nathan smiled softly. She is not part of a headline anymore. She is my wife. The cameras clicked furiously, but Nathan's expression remained peaceful, grounded in the truth he no longer needed to hide. Later that day, after the reporters left, Mia found him on the rooftop terrace of the building. The city spread wide below them, alive and bright. You handled that well, she said, leaning on the railing beside him. You did not hide. I am done hiding, Nathan replied. I spent years managing perceptions. Now, I just want to live the truth we built. She smiled. Then let us finish it together. A soft wind moved through the steel beams, carrying the scent of fresh paint and possibility. When the final beam was lifted into place, the workers cheered, and Nathan reached for her hand. We did it, he said quietly. No, Mia corrected gently, we started it. That evening, they hosted a small gathering at the site, not a gala, not a spectacle, just friends, employees, and community members who had supported the project. String lights hung between the beams, casting warm light on faces filled with hope. Nathan raised a glass. To second chances, he said. To learning that sometimes the best things in life come from mistakes worth making. The crowd applauded softly. Mia looked at him, her eyes glimmering with quiet pride. When the lights dimmed and the guests left, Nathan and Mia stood alone at the heart of the building. The city stretched before them like an open page. Do you think people can really change? She asked softly. Nathan took her hand and kissed it. I think love changes everything, he said. In that moment, surrounded by the framework of the life they had built, Mia realized that their story was no longer about contracts or scandals. It was about choosing truth over fear, and love over pride. The arrangement that once began in shadows had become their foundation of light. Months passed, and the Horizon Center finally opened its doors to the public. The grand opening was simple but meaningful, held in the same atrium that Mia had once sketched on a napkin during her first meeting with Nathan. Now, sunlight poured through the massive skylight above, reflecting off polished stone floors and filling the space with warmth. Guests walked among art installations made by local creators, all part of the community initiative Nathan and Mia had launched together. The media had gathered again, but this time their tone was different, curious, respectful, even inspired. Nathan stood on the stage in a dark suit, his hand resting gently on the podium. Mia stood nearby, dressed in white, her presence calm and radiant. This building, Nathan began, was not built by one person. It was built by redemption, by courage, and by the belief that even broken stories can end beautifully. Horizon is not just a structure, it is proof that people can change when they choose honesty over fear. The crowd listened in silence. Mia felt her throat tighten as he continued. A year ago, I stood in a boardroom, hiding behind contracts and rules. I thought control could protect me from failure. But real love does not need control. It needs courage. And today, I stand here because one woman taught me that truth, no matter how hard, is always worth the risk. He turned slightly, meeting her eyes. Mia Hale, he said softly, thank you for saving my life before I even realized it needed saving. The audience erupted in applause. Mia stepped up to the microphone, her voice steady though her heart trembled. This project began as a dream I did not think I was allowed to have, she said. But Nathan believed in it and in me. So if there is anything I want people to take away from today, it is this: integrity and kindness are the only real foundations worth building on. She paused, her gaze sweeping over the faces before her. The rest, money, fame, power, those things crumble. But character lasts. When the ceremony ended, Nathan took her hand as photographers captured the moment. You know, he murmured with a teasing smile, I think Mrs. Hale suits you better every day. She laughed softly. It took you long enough to say that without a contract attached. They walked together through the atrium, surrounded by guests and light and the echo of possibility. Outside, the skyline shimmered in gold, as if the city itself was celebrating their victory. That evening, long after the crowd had gone, Nathan and Mia stood on the rooftop of Horizon, watching the lights flicker to life below. We did it, she whispered. No, he corrected gently, slipping an arm around her, we are still doing it. Because love like this is not a finish line. It is the work we choose every day. She rested her head against his shoulder, feeling the steady rhythm of his heartbeat, the same quiet strength that had carried them from strangers to partners to something far greater. The wind moved softly around them, carrying the distant hum of the city. Nathan pressed a kiss to her hair. Do you regret how it started? He asked. Mia smiled. Not for a second. Because it brought me here to you. In the glow of the horizon they had built together, their story no longer felt like an arrangement at all. It was simply love, honest and earned. A year later, the Horizon Center had become more than a building, it was a heartbeat in the city. Its halls were alive with laughter, art, and stories of people rebuilding their lives. Nathan and Mia had turned their second chance into something tangible, something that touched others. Every corner of the center reflected their journey, from the sketches hung in the gallery to the engraved plaque by the entrance that read, "Built on Truth." On a crisp autumn morning, Nathan stood outside the center watching volunteers set up for a charity fair. Mia was by the fountain, organizing an art display for local children. He watched her with quiet admiration, realizing how effortlessly she brought life into every space she touched. When she noticed him watching, she smiled and walked over. "You are early," she teased. "I could say the same," he replied, taking her hand. "Old habits," she said with a grin. "I wanted to make sure everything was perfect." Nathan looked around at the crowd, then back at her. "It already is." The event began, filled with laughter, music, and the steady hum of hope. People greeted Nathan warmly, no longer seeing a disgraced CEO but a man who had learned the power of humility. Reporters came too, but this time there were no harsh questions, only gratitude. One of them asked, "Mr. Hale, after everything that happened, do you ever wish things had gone differently?" Nathan thought for a moment, his gaze finding Mia across the courtyard. "Not at all," he said. "Sometimes the mistakes we are most afraid of become the roads to everything we need." Later, as the sun began to set, he found Mia sitting by the fountain, her shoes off, her feet resting on the edge of the water. "Do you remember the day you signed that contract?" he asked softly. She laughed. "I remember thinking you were the most impossible man I had ever met." "And now?" "Now," she said, leaning against him, "I think you are the best decision I ever made." Nathan chuckled quietly, reaching into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a small velvet box and opened it. Inside was the same silver ring he had given her, now engraved on the inside with the words, "No more lies, just us." "You kept this?" she whispered. "Always," he said. "I thought it was time we made it official." She blinked back tears as he slipped the ring back onto her finger. Around them, the fountain lights glowed softly, and the sound of the city faded into a gentle hush. "Mrs. Hale," he murmured, "how does it feel to have turned a contract into forever?" She smiled through her tears. "It feels like freedom." He kissed her then, not with the urgency of their past but with the certainty of their future. The camera of life panned wide the horizon center behind them, the city glittering ahead. What began as an arrangement born of lies had become a love built on truth, resilience, and redemption. And as the night settled over the city, their story once signed on paper was now written in light, in laughter, and in the promise of forever.